In this video, we're going to discuss how to become a freight broker, a freight agent, or possibly a dispatching service. I'm Benjamin Kowalski with Freight 360, where we provide the latest transportation sales tips and training videos to help you reach your goals faster. If you're new here, make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button below. For all the links we'll be discussing here will be found in the description underneath me. And for more free content, please be sure to add our weekly podcast, Freight 360, to your playlist. Let's jump into it. Now, most of you looking into this question have at least heard of or generally know what a freight broker or a freight agent does. You may even be familiar with what a dispatching service is. However, you may not know exactly what qualifies one over the other or really what the legal frameworks are. So we're first going to cover the definitions and the frameworks and then dig into some of the pitfalls and most commonly discovered by those who haven't researched this before jumping in. The FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier and Safety Administration, is the lead federal agency responsible for regulating and providing safety oversight for all of the commercial vehicles over the road. They define a freight broker as an intermediary that connects carriers with shippers. And for instance, if the shipper has a load going from point A to point B, their job is to match that load up with a carrier that's going to haul that load. They must be licensed with the FMCSA, they must have a bond, and be insured at a minimum. And with these three items in place, anyone can legally operate as a freight broker. That being said, they won't likely be as successful without additional tools and expenses that will fuel their business and sales. We'll jump back into those tools and expenses in a moment. Now, what is a freight agent? They are an independent contractor that works underneath a broker or a brokerage and operate under that broker's MC and authority. They typically operate on a straight commission under that broker and between 50 to 70% of gross. They don't need authority, they don't need their own bond, and they don't need their own insurance. Their primary job is to find more shippers and develop more business. Underneath that job function, there are also some other responsibilities for the freight. They need to quote, they need to price the loads, they need to book the carriers, track and trace the loads, and deliver them on time and in good condition. Typically a much smaller set of responsibilities than they would have if they were to open up a full brokerage. Now, what is a dispatch service? Now, where a lot of people can be confused is that they're not a broker and these are not an agent. They are typically a solopreneur or a group of individuals that contracts with carriers. These carriers are typically owner-ops or smaller fleets, and their job is they go and find them more loads and assist with processing the paperwork and the billing so the drivers and the carriers can focus on what they do best. For doing that, they typically earn around a 5% commission. Now, the FMCSA qualifies these as unauthorized brokering because they are co-brokering freight without their own or under anyone else's authority. Okay, which technically makes them illegal. Now, these aren't my opinions, and I'm certainly not suggesting that anyone should or shouldn't pursue or use one of these. I am saying that this is a very gray area, and if something does go wrong, they aren't operating under a legal authority, which definitely increases their risks. Now, back to the other tools, expenses, and responsibilities of brokers. One of the things we see most often is that people underestimate the amount of time and money it takes to do these things. For example, a freight agent is only responsible for cold calling, developing new relationships, and booking those loads. But a brokerage, on the other hand, in addition to making 60 to 80 cold calls a day, now has to learn how to develop and manage their accounting protocols, their invoicing of carriers, their invoicing of customers, and the reconciliation of these invoices and all the accessorial charges. Establishing these protocols for customer creditworthiness, how much and how long you're going to extend credit to any one of the shippers you're going to be working with. Oh, and by the way, you're also going to be on the hook for the bad debt expense, which in many cases a freight agency is going to be willing to assume for you. That's the risk that your shipper or your customer just isn't going to pay you for the work that you've done. Now, you're also going to need to learn how to evaluate a transportation management system from scratch, which for someone working with an agency at first means you just really need to learn what one of these are and how to use it as a tool. But if you're going to own your own brokerage, this entails learning, evaluating, and paying for, and in some cases integrating it with your accounting protocols. A much larger set of responsibilities and a lot more things to learn right out of the gate. Now, which one's right for you? We've all heard the statistics that a lot of businesses go under in the first 1, 2, or 3 years. That's because there's a lot of things that need to happen to operate a business. And we've barely touched the surface in this video. What's important to remember is that there are plenty of ways to see if owning a freight brokerage is right for you. And they don't all involve the same risk as jumping into an entire brokerage. Now, the agency model, for example, is designed for the aspiring agent to really get their feet wet without having to dive headfirst into the deep end. You'll likely be able to negotiate upwards of 70% of gross commissions and avoid having to learn and understand all of the other aspects of business at the same time you're learning an entirely new industry. Now, whichever option you choose, we'll be here for all of your training and educational needs. And if there's a topic you'd like us to cover either on our podcast or in an upcoming training video, please share it in the comments. And remember, whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.